Do you feel lonely? As you get older, do you feel more alone? I'm talking about, have you got like lots of mates, friends? I'm talking like a proper friend. I'm talking real mates, someone you could talk to about maybe stuff that you want other people to know. Not acquaintances, maybe at work, or people you might acknowledge down the pub. I'm talking about like a real friend. As I've got older, I've noticed that I've become increasingly sort of isolated. Some of that, I admit, is absolutely self-inflicted. Some of that isolation, 100% I embrace. I actually like being alone. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not necessarily talking about being alone. I'm talking about loneliness. Because it seems to be an ever-increasing problem, especially for men as they get older. I mean, as I said, I embrace the whole working from home. I don't live with my partner. I have my kids. Well, kid now, because one of them's left home. I enjoy being alone, I admit it. In fact, some would say I embrace it. The whole working from home, not having to engage in small talk with people at the office and all of that. And I hate crowds. The idea of socialising now, whilst 20 years ago, yeah, sure, first at the door, but now I can't be bothered with all of that. So yeah, a lot of being alone, I really embrace. And there's a distinction between being isolated, self-isolation, and loneliness. And it's more the loneliness that I'm interested in. Loneliness is a problem, especially in men, say over 40. Whilst I enjoy being alone and isolated a lot of the time, I am worried that might suddenly turn into loneliness. It's a bit like coastal erosion. These things don't happen overnight. It's a slow drip, drip, drip process of you isolating yourself more from society, of friends sort of drifting away, of relationships coming to an end, etc. And over time, as you get older, I think loneliness can affect a lot of people without them realising, because it's sort of crept up on them. We often think of loneliness as something kind of the reserve of senior citizens, old folks. I've got a neighbour of mine, an old fella, nice guy, and since I was working in my garden last summer, and I've only really been working in my back garden for a few months, we'd had a few conversations over the fence and what I'm going to do about the fence and all of that. He'd help me out with the odd bit of gardening work because he had the tools, like these old fellas do. They have all the tools you need. And so we would have just sort of pleasant conversations. And it was through those that I learned about his wife passing many, many years ago, and his dog, and how he'd been taking it to the vet recently. And then one day I could almost sense that he wanted to say something. I wasn't 100% sure what, but there was just a feeling. And then he started talking about his dog and how he'd taken it to the vet, and sadly the vet had to put the dog down. And in that moment, I could see tears in this old fella's eyes welling up. I mean, I don't know the guy that well, and this is just like a neighbour, an acquaintance over the fence. I wasn't sure what to do. I felt a bit awkward, as often you do in these scenarios. I'm never very good with emotional outbursts, but I kind of felt really sorry for the old fella, and so I sort of gave him a few words of comfort and patted him on the shoulder to sort of say, don't worry, mate, I understand. Don't be embarrassed about, letting out your emotion. And, he was all apologetic for being emotional, as I said, as blokes are, because he was embarrassed that he'd welled up in front of me. But it was in that moment that I realised, in a way, that he was grateful to have someone to talk to, even if it wasn't someone he didn't know that well. He had to kind of let it out, the sadness of the bereavement of his beloved dog. I kind of realised that whilst you can be alone and that's fine, loneliness is actually when you don't have someone to be able to unburden suppressed feelings. And that's why I think it's a real issue for mostly men. I mean, I'm not discounting women, of course, but from a male perspective, reports, especially in the UK, say that loneliness is an increasing issue for men in their 40s and 50s, because it can lead to kind of, mental health issues. Yeah, as you get older and maybe your family drifts away, and you may have chosen, like me, that you prefer isolation rather than the company of many people, that loneliness could creep up on you. I mean, as I said before, self-isolation or being on your own is not necessarily the same as loneliness. they can be mutually exclusive. Ironically enough, many years ago, when I was in my first full long-term relationship with the mother of my children, we all lived together, obviously, in a kind of happily married scenario. Wasn't married, but you know what I mean? But actually, towards the end of that relationship, I actually felt more alone then than I did when I separated and lived on my own for a while. And that's the key thing, as I said, the difference between loneliness and being on your own, being alone. Because I actually enjoyed my own company and I didn't have any issues or didn't have any problems to discuss. I was happy. I was happy on those few days that I had by myself. Then the other half of the week, I'd have my kids and all my energies would go into that. But what with the pandemic and working from home, you begin to lose that kind of adult human interaction, albeit over Zoom. But at least I have those regular meetings. I see people virtually on a regular basis. I'm not going to be having that in 6 weeks' time. And whilst these people might not be close to you, there is a kind of social exchange that takes place. And as I said, whilst I enjoy working from home and I prefer not having the hassle of going into the office and all that useless small talk, as my kids get older, I've got one already at university, my other one will probably be going there in 2 to 3 years, is like coastal erosion, loneliness going to creep up on me. Right now, I don't think I suffer from loneliness. As I said, I've got my partner who comes every kind of week or so and stays for a few days. One of my kids still, I look after for half the week. And then, yeah, those few days on my own, as I said, for now, are an opportunity to, you know, recharge my batteries, chill down, maybe put some work into making videos and stuff like that. So I would say at the moment, it's a reasonable balance. If my partner comes to live with me full time, then great. That will kind of reduce the risk of that loneliness kind of kicking in. But as I said, what I'm concerned about is like coastal erosion. Loneliness can creep up on you without you realizing. Is that a healthy way to be? At the moment, it's not an issue. I don't feel like I have any significant issues or pressures that I need to share with anyone. But it did get me thinking about the old fella across the fence who, you know, was living his life, was quite happy, but had that burden of the bereavement of his beloved dog, and yet no one in his house to share it with. And whilst, as I said, life seems to be pretty good, and occasionally I do get the opportunity, obviously I can share things with my partner, especially when she's around. It's a lot easier to share face to face than via WhatsApp and whatnot. I can unburden some of the thoughts and feelings that I have. You know, I'm retiring in 6 weeks and my mind's all a kind of whirly-gig of like, oh God, have I made the right decision? Have the maths add up? Oh my God, what if it's all wrong? What if the pension doesn't work out how I think it's going to be? So I have got some sort of minor concerns like that, but that's a decision I've made and I'll live by it. And I'm happy with that. I'm happy to stand by the decisions in life that I make for myself. But yeah, as you get older and maybe you've got children and then they leave home, you can see how loneliness might, you know, set in. I live in a village and I haven't got any mates in the village. I used to have a few acquaintances that you'd see at the school gates as you dropped your kid off at the primary school. Well, my kids don't go to the primary school anymore. They go to high school. And I don't see any of their mums there because I dropped my son off in the car. And there's no one in the village, maybe one person that I got on well with maybe. I used to see him on the commute to work. But other than that, there's no one in the village that I go out and socialise with. So the only going out I do is with my partner, when we might go for a meal or something. I don't enjoy going down the pub anymore. In my 20s and 30s, I had a hardcore gang of about 4 or 5 of us, and even if nothing was arranged, you might get that call at 9 o'clock on a Saturday, your mate going, we're all down the Paradise, the pub I used to live near. We're all down to Paradise. Fancy popping down for a quick pint? Sure, I'd say. And I'd say to my then partner, just going down the pub, meet the boys, I'll be back a bit later. And that was it. And, you know, that little close group of guys and friends that I had, we went on holidays together. You know, went to Bilbao, we went to New York, we went to Las Vegas. But when you're young there, you're not in long-term relationships and all those sort of things, that's a lot easier to do. And then slowly, as that group gets older, you start sort of pairing off and getting married and having families, and obviously dedicating more of your time to the family and less time on opportunity for you to go out with your mates like you did. And then you might decide as your children get older, you know what, I used to live in London, you know what, we want to move out to the country. So you move out to the countryside and stuff like that. And then the friends you meet might be friends with, as I say, kids of a similar age and stuff like that. And then you grow up and you maybe have the odd little lunchette or coffee morning with them or whatever it is. But then, as I said, the kids leave primary school and go to different schools, and you might not meet up so much. When you're in a couple relationship with kids and you're sort of meeting other parents with kids down the park, they're more acquaintances than, best mates and all of that. So yeah, I read a report recently that said loneliness is an ever-increasing problem, especially in men in their sort of 40s and 50s. And this has increased dramatically. And if we just look at some of the issues in the report, why this is, some of the key reasons why men in their 50s might be experiencing loneliness, particularly in the UK. Societal expectations of masculinity. Men are often raised to be strong and stoic, to suppress their emotions and tough it out. I was talking to my partner recently about how culturally, from a very young age, as a boy, if we fall over and graze our knee, we start sort of sobbing or something, our mum or our dad would say, come on, big boys don't cry. Big boys don't cry. So, yeah, you can see how culturally over years and years, this can make it difficult for men, especially to open up about their feelings, including loneliness. Because loneliness doesn't feel like one of those sort of big, serious issues, or, I'm feeling depressed, or, like the real heavy mental health issues that people, talk about, ADHD, I feel I've got, bipolar. No, we're just talking about loneliness. And that seems like, I don't know, when you say it, it just sounds a bit pathetic. And yet it's not. It can lead to serious issues. Life transitions. So as mentioned earlier, a period of significant change for many men. Retirement, children leaving home, the loss of parents or a spouse. These transitions can disrupt social connections, leading to the feelings of isolation. I've read someone on Reddit and they said some of it is inevitable, death of friends and family, but I also find it a struggle to grow your circle. I've got friends I've made through my hobby as well as other activities. It seems that it's a constant struggle to keep the circle inflated, for the lack of a better term. And I think that's kind of an interesting point. What if you don't have any kind of group-like hobbies? I'm always taking the mickey out of all these mammals, men in lycra cycling around on a Sunday, a bit overweight in their tightly pulled on lycra. But yeah, actually, who am I to laugh? At least they're with their mates in their 40s and 50s, having fun cycling around. So yeah, the difficulties of maintaining friendships. As men get older, it could be harder to maintain close friendships. Work and family commitments may take priority. As I said, as you sort of settle down into the family, you might lose your original core set of mates. And then if you separate, who gets custody of the mates, the friends of the family? And then reluctance to seek help. Like I said, a real stigma around mental health. And I guess the sense that loneliness is not a mental health issue. Surely bipolar is, ADHD, anxiety, not loneliness, but it is. It feels a bit wussy, doesn't it? You know what I mean? It goes against that kind of culture. That's a big issue with men in their 40s upwards of mental health issues. In the UK, and this never ceases to shock me, the biggest killer of men over 40 is suicide. It's unbelievable. And that's brought on by the pressures of life and the inability of people of being able to express their feelings and emotions. So whilst, yes, I'm on my own most of the time, I'm lucky I have a partner. I'm lucky I've still got, my kids half the week, or at least one kid half the week. And I have no kind of emotional issues that I need to kind of unburden or share. And if I did, I feel like I could share it with my current partner. But as I said, what if that goes away? Then what? Where do I unburden issues that may or may not arise? And that's the thing with loneliness. You no longer have the ability to unburden yourself of any emotional issues. It's an increasing concern for older men. I enjoy being alone, right? Don't get me wrong, but does being alone inevitably lead to loneliness? You might think, yes, obviously it does, but I'm not sure. Is there a way to recognize the traits of loneliness as opposed to being alone. And what can you do about it? I think the good thing out of all of this is at least I'm aware. I'm aware of the situation. I'm aware of my scenario. Just talking out aloud, talking to this camera, helps me process some of those thoughts. And often I go home after these sessions, or talking to the camera here, and I kind of have more focus. Every so often, I think I'm going to have to sort of just check in with myself to kind of say, are you all right? And just be slightly more aware when I've retired, as I said, in 6 weeks' time, of any signs of loneliness. And yeah, maybe I'll reach out to my old mate from this village, see if he's around, see if he's up for a drink. Anyway, I just wanted to kind of share that, see if you've got similar experiences, whether you enjoy being alone and yet fear being lonely. I know it sounds a bit obvious or a bit connected. I'm not sure it entirely is. But let me know what your thoughts are in the comments down below. And as ever, if you enjoyed this video, then please give it a thumbs up, because I like it, YouTube likes it, and it helps people like you find content just like this. And if you're new to my channel, or you've watched a couple of videos and haven't done it yet, why don't you hit that subscribe button, toggle that notification bell, and that way you'll know when I go live with videos just like this. And talking of videos just like this, why don't you check out the videos here? These ones here. I've made space for them, look. See, I'm over here. I'm over here. Here are these videos. Check them out. You might enjoy them. Thanks for watching.